It's midnight on a freezing December night in 1355 CE, and you're a 22-year-old cut purse in medieval London. You press yourself into the shadows of a narrow alley, your fingers stiff from cold, your stomach hollow from 2 days without food. Around your waist hangs a leather purse containing 3 silver pennies, tonight's entire haul. And if you're caught, the penalty isn't a fine or a night in jail. It's your hand, or your life. Welcome to the world of medieval thieves. It's not quite what modern crime looks like. Today we're diving into what daily existence was actually like for those who survived by stealing in medieval Europe. And I'm warning you right now, this is going to shatter any romantic notions you might have about roguish pickpockets and charming bandits. We're talking extreme poverty, brutal mutilations, public executions, and a justice system that assumed God himself would personally intervene to reveal your guilt. Let's start with a day in the life. Because if you think avoiding security cameras is stressful, medieval thieves would like a word. Your day began before dawn, not by choice, but because sleeping past sunrise in your rat-infested corner of a decaying boarding house meant losing precious hours when merchants were moving goods to market and wealthy travelers were making their way through crowded streets. You shared your cramped space with 5 other desperate souls, each trying to scrape together enough to eat another day. The rent was 2 pence weekly, paid to a landlord who asked no questions about how you earned it. Medieval cities were perfect hunting grounds for thieves, but they were also death traps. Streets were narrow, winding passages where the upper stories of wooden buildings jutted out overhead, blocking sunlight and creating perpetual twilight even at midday. Garbage festered in open ditches. The air reeked of human waste, animal carcasses, and unwashed bodies. At night, there were no streetlights, only the occasional candle flickering behind shuttered windows. Some cities employed night watchmen with lanterns, but they were easily avoided by anyone who knew the back alleys and hidden courtyards. You needed to know your city intimately, which taverns attracted drunk merchants with heavy purses, which churches had the wealthiest congregations, which market days brought in farmers and traders from the countryside. People unfamiliar with urban dangers, their coin purses hanging exposed at their belts. Because in the 14th century, nobody had pockets. People carried their money in small leather purses tied to their waists, dangling like ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. This is where the cut purse got their name. You carried a small, sharp knife honed to a razor's edge. Your job wasn't to wrestle the purse away. That would cause a scene. Your job was to slice the leather strap in a single, silent motion and catch the purse before it hit the ground. The best cut purses could work a crowded marketplace and vanish with 5 or 6 purses before anyone noticed. The technique required years to perfect. Steady hands, nerves of iron, and an intimate understanding of how people moved, where they looked, when they were distracted. Some thieves operated in teams. One would create a distraction, stumbling into the mark, asking directions, dropping something that required the victim's attention. While the target was occupied, the cut purse struck. Other teams used children, 7 or 8 years old, whose small size and innocent appearance allowed them to slip through crowds unnoticed. These child thieves were trained by adults who took the lion's share of their earnings. If caught, the child faced the punishment while their masters disappeared into the crowd. For those who specialized in burglary, the work was even more dangerous. Breaking into homes required tools, crowbars, iron spokes, lock breakers. According to a 13th century Arabic text called the Book of Charlatans, which detailed criminal techniques across the medieval world, burglars carried dried bread and beans. If someone inside heard them breaking through a wall, they would crunch the food in their teeth, making people think a cat had caught a mouse. Some burglars even used turtles. They would light a small candle, stick it to a turtle's back, and send it through the hole they'd made to explore the house's layout before entering. But here's the reality: most medieval thieves weren't master criminals. They were desperate people stealing to survive. About 20% of the medieval population were destitute, homeless, wandering, climbing under hedges to die. When you have nothing, when your children are starving, when there's no welfare system and no safety net, theft becomes survival. A loaf of bread, a piece of cloth, anything you could sell or trade. The punishment for getting caught depended on what you stole, who you stole from, and who you were. And it was almost always brutal. For petty theft, stealing food or small items, the most common punishment was a fine. 3 marks for stealing 1 öre, according to 13th century Swedish law. But that assumed you could pay. If you couldn't, you faced public humiliation, locked in stocks in the town square while people threw garbage and excrement at you. This wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. You were exposed to the elements for days without food or water, defenseless against anyone who wanted to hurt you. For more serious theft, the punishments escalated horrifyingly. Flogging, having 1 or both ears cut off, the severing of a hand. These mutilations served a dual purpose. They punished the criminal and marked them permanently, ensuring everyone would know they were a thief for the rest of their lives. A man without a hand couldn't easily steal again, and couldn't find honest work either. You became a living warning to others. The worst cases: theft from churches, theft from nobles, highway robbery, or being caught repeatedly, meant death by hanging. Your body would be left on the gibbet at the town's edge, rotting for weeks as a deterrent to others. In 1202, the city of Lincoln recorded 114 murders, 89 violent robberies, and 65 serious woundings. Only 2 people were executed. Many criminals simply got away with it, which suggests the justice system was overwhelmed or corrupt. But even more terrifying than execution was the prospect of trial by ordeal. Before jury trials became standard in the 13th century, accused thieves faced what was called the judgment of God. If you were accused of robbery or theft, particularly if you had a bad reputation, or if witnesses testified against you, you would be subjected to physical trials that supposedly allowed God to prove your innocence or reveal your guilt. In trial by cold water, you were stripped nearly naked, bound with rope, and thrown into a river or pond. If you sank, the water had accepted you. You were innocent. If you floated, the water had rejected you. You were guilty and would be executed. Either way, your chances of survival were slim. In trial by hot iron, a priest would heat an iron bar until it glowed red. You would grasp it and carry it 9 feet before dropping it. Your hand was then bandaged. 3 days later, a priest would examine the wound. If it was healing cleanly, God had intervened to save you. Innocent. If it was festering and infected, God had revealed your guilt. You would be hanged. The logic was chilling. God would protect the innocent through a miracle. The guilty would suffer. But what actually happened? Historians have found that many accused thieves passed their ordeals at remarkably high rates. Why? Some scholars believe priests, who spent days praying with the accused before the ordeal, formed opinions about their guilt and subtly manipulated the results, allowing iron to cool slightly, tying knots in ways that made floating less likely, ignoring ambiguous signs of infection. Even King William II complained when 50 men accused of poaching his deer passed the ordeal, reportedly saying, "What is this? God is a just judge? May he perish who henceforth believes that." The Catholic Church finally banned priests from participating in ordeals in 1215, forcing courts to adopt jury trials instead. But for medieval thieves, the damage was done. The justice system assumed you were guilty until proven innocent, and proving innocence often required surviving torture. Now, did medieval thieves organize into guilds like in fantasy stories? Mostly no. The romantic idea of structured thieves' guilds with hierarchies, guild halls, and training programs is largely fiction. But organized crime did exist in more informal ways. Some criminal groups operated as loose networks. In 1455, French authorities raided a brothel in Dijon and discovered a gang called the Coquillards. They had their own slang, a leader they called their king, and specialized in picking locks, loaded dice, fake, jewelry, highway robbery, and murder. They would gather periodically to spend their stolen money, then disperse for weeks of thieving before reuniting. This is as close to a real thieves' guild as medieval Europe got. More commonly, thieves worked with fences, shopkeepers or merchants who bought stolen goods without asking questions and resold them. These networks were informal, based on personal relationships and mutual benefit. Taverns and alehouses served as meeting places where criminals could find work, fence goods, and share information about potential targets. The truly desperate formed small gangs of bandits in rural areas, preying on travelers along roads. These weren't organized syndicates. They were clusters of former soldiers, displaced peasants, or escaped criminals hiding in forests. They would ambush merchants, pilgrims, and anyone who looked vulnerable. When authorities mobilized to hunt them down, they scattered. What about the relationship between thieves and society? It was complicated. Medieval people understood that poverty drove crime. Churches provided some relief through almsgiving and charity, but it was never enough. Town councils occasionally waived taxes for the poorest families or distributed food. But charity was selective, divided between the deserving poor, widows, orphans, people fallen on hard times, and the undeserving poor, foreigners, vagrants, people assumed to be able to work. Thieves fell firmly into the latter category. Yet there's evidence that some communities tolerated certain kinds of theft as a necessary evil. As long as thieves targeted outsiders, wealthy merchants, or travelers, rather than local residents, authorities sometimes looked the other way. It was an unspoken arrangement. Steal from strangers, don't cause riots, and we won't hunt you too aggressively. But this tolerance evaporated quickly if thieves stepped over invisible lines. Steal from a church? Unforgivable. Steal from a noble? You've invited devastating retribution. Attack someone on a main road in daylight? The town will mobilize to hang you as an example. Life expectancy for medieval thieves was brutally short. Most died young, from violence, execution, disease, or starvation. In some late medieval cities, up to 40% of the population was too poor to pay taxes, living hand to mouth in unheated rooms with threadbare clothes and patched shoes. When famine or plague struck, these were the first to die. Thieves lived on the absolute margins, one mistake away from the gallows. Despite all this, theft remained endemic throughout the Middle Ages. Why? Because the alternative was starvation. Because enforcement was inconsistent and overwhelmed. Because the gap between rich and poor was vast and visible. A noble could wear clothes worth a craftsman's annual income. A bishop could feast while beggars starved outside the church. When survival is at stake, people steal. After the Black Death killed a third of Europe's population in the mid-1300s, attitudes toward theft hardened. Labor shortages gave peasants more bargaining power, threatening the feudal system. Authorities, already anxious about social upheaval, began pursuing thieves more aggressively. France saw former soldiers turning to brigandage after wars ended, terrorizing whole regions. Laws became harsher, executions increased. By the late Middle Ages, theft was no longer seen primarily as a personal offense, requiring compensation to victims. It was seen as a crime against the state, against social order itself. Thieves weren't just stealing property, they were threatening the entire structure of medieval society. Why any of this matters? Medieval thieves lived in a world utterly unlike ours. No forensic evidence, no presumption of innocence, no defense attorneys, no proportional sentencing. Just desperate people committing desperate acts, facing punishments designed to terrorize rather than rehabilitate. They navigated cities without streetlights, carrying illegal knives and stolen goods, knowing that discovery meant mutilation or death. They slept in filthy rooms, went days without food, and watched friends disappear into dungeons or onto scaffolds. They developed techniques, some ingenious, others brutal, to separate people from their money and possessions. Most left no records, no names, no stories. They were statistics in court rolls, bodies on gibbets, cautionary tales and sermons. The ones we know about are the ones who got caught, whose crimes were spectacular enough or whose trials were unusual enough to be recorded. But they were people, driven to crime by poverty, hunger, and a society that offered them no other options. Some were genuinely cruel and violent. Others were just trying to survive another day. All faced a justice system that viewed them not as humans who could be reformed, but as problems to be eliminated. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what life was really like for medieval thieves, smash that like button and subscribe for more analytical approaches to history. What other aspects of medieval daily life would you like to see covered? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.